We are selling James's books over there. If you're interested, we even get a chance to have it signed.
Wow.
Thank you, James.
As we touched on yesterday evening, this source or ground or openness is always present, and we can be aware of it or not aware of it. Both the awareness of it and the not awareness of it arise like a magical display. In magic, something arises out of nothing. What appears seems to be there, but because it's magical, it's unborn. And this is very, very important, because there are many philosophical systems coming from India where they would say this world is a world of illusion, and you need to awaken from illusion to the truth, which is reliable as something. But when we see that both awareness and unawareness are like magical formations, neither can be grasped, neither has actually been born. Awareness is not a substance, it's not a thing. If you like, it's a mode or a mood of being. It's a quality of clarity which is transparent. You can see through it, you can't find it. It's everywhere. It's the basis of the illumination of everything, but it's not a thing. It's very difficult to think about non-things, because language is structured around thingness. This is why it's beyond language. But if we just hold in mind that we're not trying to go from the unreal to the real. There is no real. Real means thingness, not about thingness. The ground shows clarity, it shows confusion. Why? No reason. No intention. There's no God, there's no devil. It's not like the good guys make the good stuff and some bad force makes the bad force. Neither has ever occurred, but it appears to have occurred. This is the meaning of illusion, of magic. So when we're meditating, it's not that we're trying to go from one impure state to a pure state. Ignorance is as pure as awareness, because ignorance is unborn. It doesn't exist. It has never existed. Awareness also has never existed. Now we have to be very clear what this means. Existence means here the density of the appearance that gives us a sense that somehow this is apprehendable. Even if it's not apprehendable through the body, it is comprehensible. So it's apprehendable through the mind. I can get hold of this. I can get a handle on this. I can grasp this in some way. Which is often how we approach Dharma. We read these books, it's full of all these ideas, they're interesting, but they're a bit strange, and we struggle to make sense of them and comprehend them. But it's always dissolving. It's always dissolving. We read a book and then afterwards you can't remember what was in the book. Wonderful. Wonderful. It's vanished. It's gone. It's impermanent. But I need to know. You know a lot already. You know a lot of things. If Dharma just becomes another thing you know, it's not going to be an open door to anything. It's just going to be another room in the house of delusion. So some of this may not make much sense if you don't do any meditation practice, but if you start to relax and be with your mind, you start to feel the need to hang on to something. It's like being a child and maybe you're a bit anxious when you're learning to swim and you want to hold on to the piece of rubber matting or polystyrene to keep you afloat. And the time when you let go of that is the time when you learn the coordination of feet and arms. You can't have feet and arms if the hands are holding on to the piece of polystyrene. You have to let go, and then the integrity of your embodiment in relation to the water starts to arise. So, although it feels important to hang on to something, it actually interrupts the organismic integrity of your embodiment as an aspect of the field. Does that example make sense? So, in order to protect ourselves, we do something which doesn't protect ourselves. We betray ourselves, we cheat ourselves by thinking that we know the way out, which is why we study Dharma, because the Buddhas of various kinds have laid all this out clearly, which we can't see, because we start from here I am, and I grew up here, and I've learnt this, and I like this, and I don't like that, and from this position, this makes sense to me, or that doesn't make sense to me. So we're always extending out from some fixed starting point. But the Buddhists relax into the openness, and they show the view that is open. We start from the view that is closed. So that's the kind of leap of faith, if you like, or the act of devotion that allows us to imagine, and this is a horrifying thought, some people know more than we do. Some people see more than we do. That we are blind. In Buddhism, there's a lot of imagery around blindness. It's described that we have cataracts, that we have this obscured milky vision, that the lens is not functioning well. In tantric initiations, they tie a band of red cloth over your eyes, because in your blindness you can't understand what goes on, and at a certain point when the ritual has brought about the purification, the band is removed and you see the mandala in front of you, because you have to be able to see the mandala. If you're looking for what you like, if you have a selective attention, you don't see the whole shebang. The mandala is a circle inside a square. It's an enclosure which is an image of the whole. And our partial vision doesn't open to that very well. We go into foreground, background, selective attention. So to see the whole, we have to be whole. So that's a bit of a paradox. You can't get there until you are there. There's no way to do it. Now that is very important, because it is, and we are, an aspect of it is, the as is. So how will we be as we are when we are as we are? How would you do that? There is no way to do that. It is. So the issue in Dzogchen is not about developing qualities, of making something grow. You find a lot of that discourse in Tantra, where there are many kinds of visualizations and purifications and so on, where you take the potential of something and you ripen it or you increase it. In Dzogchen, we are concerned with allowing the falling away of the impediments. We don't have to remove the impediments because they are self-liberating. So we see in the text this term rangdro, occurring again and again. It means it goes free by itself. Since we've been in this room together, your body has had many postures. You've been talking to people. You've had many thoughts. Each of these moments arose, was this, and it's gone. So we're actually very, very familiar with the self-liberation of experience. It's not something metaphysical, something, over the hills and the next valley. It's always how it is. We are vanishing and replenishing simultaneously. We're emptying and filling, emptying and filling. And this seamless pulsation between the two, which are not two, is how our mind is. So this is to try to give you some sense of not worrying. Anxiety, worry, striving, working out game plans, thinking of what to do, is not really very helpful. We have to work towards trusting intuition and spontaneity. This is at the heart of our existence. In Sanskrit it's called sahaj. A lot of writing on it in Hindu texts, in Buddhist texts. And sahaj means instantly arising. Sahaj means actually, it's translated by Tibetans as born together. So the environment which you are part of and your participation in the environment that you are part of arise together. So that instead of thinking about what shall I say, what shall I do, and processing a response, your response is seamless with what is there. And we've, in the past, in different places, I've talked a lot about this in relation to sport. For example, mountain bike riding down a steep slope, or skiing. When you're going at a particular velocity, you cannot think about what you're doing. You become aware that if you think, you will have an accident. So you have to trust being part of the emergent experience. Because if you're with it, it goes well. And if you turn against the experience, if you extrapolate yourself, you now have a discordancy, you have a time lag between what is emerging as field and your response. You're out of time and you have an accident. Does that make sense? We probably all had experiences like that. So, it's exactly the same issue in meditation. When you find yourself getting caught up in a thought, you are mediating your experience. And that feels important according to the criteria of our human existence, because it allows us to create patterns of thought, narratives, which is mercantile. It's something you can trade in the world. That's the discourse and the commodity training of information technology and so on. You pattern and package concepts. But for the point of view of meditation, the thought grasped is an impediment not just to the relaxed openness of awareness, which actually never alters, but it's primarily an impediment to the actuality of the self-liberation of phenomena. The thought is going free. The sensation is vanishing. It's going. But it's special. No, it's not. It's special for me. I like this kind of thought. You are going to die. Your specialness, the specialness of your particular shaping, which allows you to say that this is special, is going over the cliff. You're hanging on to built-in obsolescence. All compounded things are impermanent. We can see this in ourselves. So we have two thoughts. You try to hang on to the thought which is always moving. You try to make the moving stable. And due to that, you don't see the never changing. So if you want something which doesn't change, this is awareness. If you want something which is always changing, this is concept, thought, memory, plan, all the contents of the mind that are blowing through. The sky itself doesn't change, but the clouds come, and the rainbows, and the storm, and the hail, and the snow, and then the clarity. And it's always moving. So the content of the mind doesn't have to be gotten rid of. It's that we have an imbalance. We privilege the content as being the real thing, the important aspect, and due to that, we don't see the openness. So ignorance means ignoring the open ground, which doesn't block the appearance, but lightens it. It shows it. You have a kind of internal illumination, so that you see everything is shining out, radiating out from the unborn ground. If we don't have that, then you have conceptual solidification. So, whether it's aware or unaware, both are ungraspable. But unawareness or ignorance, ignoring the ground, tilts us in the direction of the delusion that we can actually grasp something. We know this very clearly in our lives, but we don't want to know it. Most of us will have had childhoods where we knew our mother. This woman was your mum. She's your mum. Definitely, it's my mum. It's obvious, my mum. But your mum wasn't just your mum. Your mum was a person, maybe going to work, having a lover, having all kind of things. She was a woman. But she's my mum. And because you knew this is my mum, you could not have access to her as a woman. So the clarity of how you have taken hold of this potential as it manifests, your mum, is both an illumination and a blindness simultaneously. Does that make sense? That is to say, again, if we take that figure ground idea, something comes to be figural. This person, this woman, is mum for me. But because she's mum for me, she's my mum. End of story. Mum, mum, get off the phone. Come on, boring, mum. Kids are all like, give it to me. You're my mum, I'm your son. Hello, best. Children really get desperate for that. But it's a blindness. It's an absolute blindness. So when we observe that in our mind, and we see the particular thoughts that engage us, the things we fall into, our habit formations, they seem to be inherently true and real for us. And then we look around, other people don't do what we do. If you smoke cigarettes, you see lots of other people don't smoke cigarettes. If you eat meat, you see other people don't eat meat. People do different things. If what you did was intrinsically valid as the best possible option, then there's only two conclusions. Either everyone else is nuts because they don't choose what you choose, or you've misconstrued it. You haven't seen that you make this special. The specialness is not inherent in the object, because if it was in the object, it would have such a pulling power, everybody would be sucked into that. I mean, at the moment, we see toilet paper is becoming incredibly important for the citizens of London. What do you do when you're stuck at home? Oh, I just wipe my arse all day. So you get a reconstitution of the meaning of life. That's the value of toilet paper is arising due to mental formations. People are making it important. A few weeks ago, it wasn't important. And for meditators, this is really, really important. It's not in the object. The answer doesn't lie in the object. Because when you observe the object, the actual, you see all objects are mental. Wow. All objects are mental. So, go into the supermarket, you find the last packet of toilet paper. What do you see? It usually has bits of several rolls. It's got a cellophane kind of wrapping on it. So you're seeing glistening surface. Inside there's a more matte surface from the paper. Visually, this is what you're seeing. Now you're conceptualizing it by incorporating it into your frame of reference, and your frame of reference is shifted because of the nature of the virus, and you're thinking, well, I need to have these essential commodities in my house. So there's an valuation of this entity. Where's that coming from? This is projected. This is your mind. So when you're so glad that you got the last packet of toilet paper, this is your mind talking to your mind. Because what is it? The thing about toilet paper, it's quite soft. So you can soak it and make it quickly into a kind of papier-mâché that you could mold. Why not? When we were at school, we used to chew the blotting paper and flick it onto the ceiling in the room. You know, everything is open. There is enormous potential in everything you encounter. But when you fixate onto a particular reading, the potential recedes into the background, and your particular precise situationally derived meaning becomes the true meaning, the true value, which you take to be inherent in the situation. So inherence of meaning is projected. Wow. The only thing which is intrinsic is the possibility of awareness and unawareness. Everything else is an elaboration, which is arising due to causes and conditions, the force fields which are moving. So when you look at your own life, and it's always very important not just to do meditation, but to do contemplation or reflection on the application of these ideas of the Dharma to the lived actuality of your life, family relationships, work relationships, and you see how you are constellated into particular formations by these circumstances, then you see, I don't exist as something. I cannot say how I will be. I don't know what thought will arise in my mind in the next minute. Something will happen. Something will happen. I'm speaking, but I don't know what I'm going to say. You hear it, and I hear it at the same time, because that's how life is. If you prepare a speech for a conference, it's a different matter. Conference speeches tend to be quite deadening, because they are dead. They have been finished before the conference, and they're presented, taken out of the freezer, warmed up a wee bit, with the passionate expression of the lecturer, and then it's gone. But liveliness is unpredictable. It is co-emergent, and so we don't know. So this is where the cusp between awareness and unawareness is, that in unawareness we fall under the power of the fantasy that we can know. And so I'll say a little bit more about awareness, and then we look at unawareness. But maybe we take a little pause and just do some sitting. So we just sit with whatever is arising, let it come, let it go. Okay. So the general recommendation is not to do the practice for very long, for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and then repeat it again and again if you have time. Because we don't want to be struggling to correct it or make it happen. It's very easy to go under the power of the thought. Because generally speaking, we begin inside duality. Subject and object, self and other. So there's me with my body and my mind and the world outside. And we're living in this chopped up bit existence. And so we're so used to having to manage and constrain and direct our experience that it's very easy to slip into that mode even when you're sitting. So let's look a little bit more at awareness. It's often described, certainly by Padmasambhava, as having four main aspects. The first is non-dual. Non-dual means unsplit, undivided. That is to say that the object side and the subject side are not two. They're not one, but they're not two. So when you walk down the street, your body is moving, the houses seem to be fairly stable. I'm moving, they're not moving. I'm not the same as the building, I'm not the same as a bus. I'm just me. That's a conceptual interpretation. That's how the world appears to us inside the frame of duality. If we relax a little bit and we experience the field that is arising, then the movement of my body, the pressure of my feet on the ground, the bus coming along on the road, the people walking by, it's all coming at once. It's all experience. It's happening to me. That's an interpretation. The thought, it's happening to me, is part of the experience. Experience is not just one flavor, it's multiple. If it was colors, it'd be polychromatic. So for example, object side and subject side arise together. So the thought, I'm walking down the road, and the walking are non-oppositional. It's not that I shouldn't have any commentary on what I'm doing. If I only have the commentary on what I'm doing and it blinds me to the revelation of the moment-by-moment sensation in the body, the glistening colors of the world, then it's become a veil of some kind. It's a dulling and obscuring thing. But I can have both. I can have the commentary, and I can have the sensation, and I can have the memory, and I can have the actuality of all the different things that are going on, if the mind is big enough. Consciousness, me making sense of what's going on, is a small bowl. It is small, and therefore we have to have selective attention. Some things are important, some things are privileged, and other things are relegated to being unimportant for me. If you like it, good luck to you, but not for me. So the selective attention allows the pseudo omnipotence of the small bowl. I like what I know, and I know what I like. Perfect. Smart bugger. So that's what it does. You don't pay attention to anything that would contradict the seeming wholeness of your interpretation. So when we relax, we let more in, more and more and more. The ego would get overwhelmed. It would start to vibrate. Don't be in the ego. Release the fixation on the ego, and the mind is big. Fixate into your ego constellation, and you are inevitably drawn towards privileging this, rejecting that, and so forth. Does that make sense? So walking down the road, sitting in a chair, going to the toilet, eating something, every activity is part of Dharma, because it is the revelation of the non-duality of experience. So, for example, in the traditional texts, they say we have awareness and emptiness, clarity and emptiness, appearance and emptiness, pleasure or sensation and emptiness. What is emptiness? Emptiness is a way of talking about the ungraspability of things. Empty means there's nothing in there to find. There's nothing you can get hold of. Appearance doesn't have an inner essence that's pushing it out. It's not arising from its own unique little source. It's not standing on some personal essence of itself. Everything is the radiance of the ground. The ground is showing itself, moment by moment, as the unique specificity of all these forms. This and this and this and this. Always, ever. More, on and on and on. So non-duality means don't split. Or rather, there has never been a split. Splitting is a delusion. And we'll come to look at that in more detail later. Awareness is inseparable from openness. So sometimes it's an image is given of it. It's like the sun in the sky. The rays of the sun spread out and illuminate the vastness of the sky. So the illuminating power of awareness illuminates everything. So you can look at your hand and you see your hand. And then you can start to look at the patterning on your fingers and the patterns on the palm of your hand. And there's a lot of stuff. And the more you get drawn into looking at one particular bit of it, the rest, as we've looked already, recedes into the background. But you can also bring everything forward at the same time. But you don't know what's happening then. If you go outside and you look at a tree and you see all this incredible complication of the branches, a winter tree, there's no leaves to add extra complications, just branches. There's the trunk, the main branches, the subsidiary branches, moving in all sorts of different directions. You get it all at once. You get it all at once. If you try to think about it, you break the tree up. You say, this is the trunk, this is this is that. You look more at what's on the far side of it, and then you lose this. Every gain is a loss inside the world of duality, because you're separating the world into particular phenomena you can get hold of. But you just relax into the out-breath, allow the tree to be present with you, to reveal itself, and the mind goes quiet. Only the quiet mind can receive the tree. Because if you're thinking about the tree, you're making your own tree. You're not receiving this. And this is not a tree. Tree is a name. And it's a name in English. There are people here from other countries and they don't say tree. Now, the English have tried to colonize the world so that everyone speaks English and we'll get rid of all these wrong names for trees. But a tree is simply a conventional term. But when you believe in the conventional term, and it seems to be the truth of what you're experiencing, what that insidiously does, it creeps in like morning mist and gives you the sense you can get hold of it. Now you know what it is. Oh, it's a beech tree, it's an oak tree. Build up more and more. Elm tree, oh yeah. I know what the leaves are like. Oh. And now you're talking to yourself. You're not seeing the tree at all. You're just in a world of one. You're annihilating the tree. You're annihilating the world. In the Bible it says, now we see but through a glass darkly, then we shall see face to face. In Dzogchen we're concerned to see face to face now, today, immediately. Face to face. Face is a very important term in Dzogchen, because the essence of the mind is called the face. Because the face is here. Our face is here. This is here. But you can't see your own face. So you can't grasp this, but it's here. So the revelation is beyond appropriation. So when you look at the tree, if you stop telling the tree what it is, you start to receive the tree. And in that moment, you have the non-duality of the clarity of receptive awareness and the revelation of the potential, which we can denominate by the term tree. And you get more tree the less you know about the tree. The tree surprises you. So we see this in art a lot. Many artists have been drawn to the same place again and again. Cézanne would go down to the south to draw this mountain. He had a place and he would sit and he'd look across the valley and he'd draw his mountain. And it was always different, because it was always different. And that's the marvel. Because he could see with fresh eyes, he could see that the hill was always different. He wasn't painting his imagined tree. Of course, what he painted was mediated through his mood at that moment, the colors on his palette and so on. But there's something, when you see his drawings, there's something authentic. You have the sense, oh, he was really there. This person was not asleep. He wasn't fantasizing. Oh, there's some breath of the hill there. And that's the possibility, that it will always be fresh. So that's what non-dual means. When you dualize, when you separate subject and object, when you start to see someone, and oh, now I see you, I see what you look like, and what's your name, and then and where did you grow up, and then you start to build up a picture of the person, and they recede. And this is very troubling for us as human beings, because we are intelligent creatures. And what this is saying is that human intelligence is overrated, because it is a narrative structure which turns whatever is encountered into a story, and that story is what we work with. I heard on the radio ex-governor of the Bank of England saying that economics is about stories. It's just stories. It's not about figures and numbers. That's just a way to tell a story. The market's doing this, the market's doing that. We say a bull market, a bear market, with all these symbolic terms that are redolent with feeling. These are ways in which one construes, makes pattern identifications, which allow us to deal with the abstract. I mean, a £10 note is now it's funny plastic. It's a funny bit of funny plastic with some colours and shapes on it, and its value is entirely conventional. It used to be gold and silver, where there was some kind of relation to directly exchangeable value. But the banknote is guaranteed by the Bank of England. It used to say that it would exchange it. If you produced the note, you would get an exchange in sterling silver. They don't promise that on the banknotes anymore. So it's an entirely conventional system. And that's how we need to see what language is. That language is a tool of potentially connectivity, but used badly, a mediating structure which hides the immediacy of phenomena from us. So you can practice when we go and have a lunch break. You can look outside, look at a building, look at people, there's some trees around. If you walk a bit, just stand, breathe out, and receive what is there. And when you find yourself wanting to tell what is there, what it is, Britain has a long colonial history, and now you are colonizing Hackney. You're planting the little flag of your imagination on the street, on the car, on the person. Decolonizing is better. We don't need colonies. The ego self colonizes the world. It puts people into brackets. When you go colonizing, you rejig the map of the country. You can see human maps. They've got lots of straight lines on them. The states in America, The newer states all have very straight lines. When Britain was fucking up the Middle East with France after the First World War, put big straight lines. This is Iraq, this is Iran, Syria. Completely unnatural. Natural borders move in a very dynamic way. The shifting historical maps of Europe are very, very interesting. Countries like Poland have been very big, then they got small. They got sheared off at the end of the war. Germany's moved around. So if you see that, think, this is concepts. So we want to return to the senses. Phenomena reveal themselves. Light comes into my eyes. Sound comes into my ears. I am being receptive to the gift of the vitality of the ground. And then we think about it, and we cut it up, and we package it, and we stitch it into the familiar patterns which reassure us that I live in my world. But you're going to die, and your world is kaput. So, if you want to get out of that beforehand, more receptivity, less narrative. It's a very interesting thing to do. And if you go and you're eating with other people, very often people will comment on the food. Oh, how is your food? And what is that? And what do you think of this? Wow. This is socializing. Socializing is opinion. The opinion is based on comparing and contrasting this in relation to that. If you taste a piece of food, bite an apple, something like that, what is there to say? This in your mouth is inexpressible. Oh, they're quite crunchy, they're good this year. Now you have something to say. Oh, I don't like that kind usually. I prefer these other ones. Oh, okay. Blether away about apples for a while. You talk about this, you talk about that. And it's always talking about. Aboutness means at one step or more removed. It is as if. It's not as is. As is inexpressible, because as is close to the ground. When awareness is in touch with the ground, this is non-duality. Non-duality basically means awareness on the ground, which is Tongpanyi, which is shunyata, emptiness, inexpressible. When we express, we are communicating. We're not establishing true meaning. So if I say it's a good apple, you don't know anything. I have not given you information about the apple. I've given you information in the moment. I wanted to say something. Maybe I want to kiss you, so I say it's a good apple. There could be all sorts of reasons why people say things and want to make relatedness. I can't say what kind of apple it is, except by betraying the apple. So I'm going to tell you lies about the apple, and you're going to tell me lies about your pizza. And then we'll lie together. And if we're lucky, we will lie together. How romantic. On the basis of storytelling. But Dzogchen is interested in relaxing from the narrative and allowing the immediacy to be there. And then, when you have more sense of that, the lie can emerge as part of the immediacy. It's not that the thoughts are bad, but we're practicing juggling. The best way to practice juggling is start with one ball. Hey, I'm quite good at this. Then you add 2, 3, they're all falling. So it's the same in a meditation. If you just focus out, there is a silencing in the mind, in the receptivity, and then gradually, as with a dimmer switch, you could increase the amount of commentary you have on top of it, and you can observe for yourself how you start to fall into the commentary and you lose the phenomena. So the non-duality goes across all the fields of our experience. We want to have the non-duality of open freshness and commentary, because that is the unification of wisdom and compassion. Wisdom is the clarity of the revelation. in the Dzogchen tradition, it's a kind of arena of Tögal. And the communication, which is the working with unfreeing locked energies, is more like about like treasure. Because just as language can tie you in knots and pull things very tight, so exercises can loosen you up, and there are many, many kinds of exercises in Dzogchen. In the tradition I've mainly trained in, it's not so necessary to do these many different techniques. Why is that? Because when you apply a technique, it's extremely difficult not to have a feedback loop that I am the one who is doing it. And the application of the technique means, am I doing it right or wrong, whatever it would be. So it becomes a system of self-reference and self-rectification, which can get in the way of the practice. More by just relaxing and opening, you can see very directly, because you don't have any agenda, you've got nothing to do, you can see the tilt whereby you go into identification. And that's the key thing we want to see. So if you're looking at the tree and you start to allow some thoughts about the tree, and then you're just in your thoughts. I lost the tree. The infinite and the finite of my conceptualization have somehow gone awry. Now something's funny here, because infinite means no limit. It's not limited in any direction. So how could my finite thought be excluding the infinite? It can't. It's not possible. The finite is inside the infinite. But if you overfixate, if you fall into the finite, it seems, and this is delusion, it's a uninsightful mistake. You don't even know you're making it. It seems real that what you're thinking is the real shebang. This is the truth of the situation. Does that make sense? So we just gradually allow more disturbance, which is why generally in this tradition we don't do long retreats. We do a short retreat, get a little awareness, and then you go out. And you go out quietly, and then you go into noisy places, and you increase disturbance. Because the function is always to integrate disturbance into stillness, so that they don't split off. It's not either or, it's always both and. Non-duality means both and. There is both emptiness and appearance, both emptiness and awareness. So this is very practical. This is something you can immediately start to apply in your life, because you recognize, hey, this is what I'm doing. I've got my scissors and I'm cutting, shaping, stitching, cutting, shaping, stitching. I am the maker. I am the maker. Why? Why am I making this? Who is the maker? If you are engaged in art, generally speaking, when the art goes well, art is arting you. You find art flowing through you. It's a benign, even blissful moment in which the doer has dissolved into the doing, because there is an unmediated relation between the fingers and the palette knife, or the voice, or the movement in the dance, and there is no observer running a commentary. And if a commentary arises, it's joyful, because it's just flying through like shooting stars or fireworks. But you stay on the beat in it, because it's not that you're in it, but in-itness, which is fundamental and intrinsic, has been allowed to emerge because you've been self-forgetful. It's not about annihilating the self. It's not that there is no self. It's simply, it needs a little bit of shrinking. Little bit of shrinking. Gets over-privileged. Okay, so we sit for, again, just a little bit. Okay. So at first it's also helpful to, and this is more intentional, but it's helpful to observe how you can move up and down a register with regard to experience. For example, when we're sitting quietly together, you can hear this fan going more. So as soon as you have a thought, oh, that's the sound of a fan, you can think, well, where is it? Why doesn't someone switch it off? God, are we stuck with it forever? So all sorts of thoughts arise on the identification of a fan. If that arises in your mind, that's fine. It's just a passing interpretation. Relax a little bit more into the out-breath and just open to sound as sound. Because it's sound. What it's sound of is your idea. If a fly was in the room or a mouse, it wouldn't be thinking about fans. It's thinking about, is there a sound of a cat? That's interesting for a mouse. So it's just a sound. So if we hear just a sound, we're hearing vibration. And then we're hearing, oh, this sound is part of the room. Because if I hear it as the fan and I feel annoyed by the fan, then it is as if something is interrupting or disturbing my practice. And I don't want that. So there you have a very clear duality. Something is oppressing me or undermining me. But sound as sound is non-dual with the space of experience. It is part of the space of experience. And so when we talk in Dzogchen about the integrity or the insiderness of everything, that there is no outside, that the wholeness of the whole is inclusive. Hearing sound as sound, you feel the inclusion. It's just sound. Car goes by, somebody moves. It's just part of what is happening. As soon as you start your conceptual identification of it, you can start to bring your opinions about it, and you can observe the splitting of the world. This is, on a small level, this is the beginning of samsara. There has been an open space with everything arising and passing, and now this is just fucking annoying. What the hell? It just goes on and on and on, and thoughts can layer themselves around that. And then where are you? Each thought wraps itself like a silkworm making a cocoon. And after a short period of time, you're wrapped inside this constrictive corset of your own identification. You paralyzed yourself. Was thought. It's exactly like gossamer. When you start to take out the silk thread, it's very, very fine. But it's strong. And these thoughts, when they bind you, they're quite strong. But they're very fine. So what you want to catch is the moment, like when the silkworm is exuding this silken substance. It comes out, it's a kind of quasi-liquid formation. And that's what's happening. There's a fluidity. A thought is flowing in your mind. That fan, there it goes again. These are thoughts flowing through, but somehow the thought is becoming dense. It's becoming thick, it's heavy, muddy, and it's layering these accretions of sediment. It's a fucking fan, it's always there. So the somethingness of the fan is your mind. This is the basis of freedom. If you see whatever is happening, I make it. William Blake said this. Heaven and hell, it is your own mind that makes it so. Many mystics have said this, and not a new idea. But you can see it directly for yourself, how your thoughts, when they conglomerate, and they're quite glutinous, they're like sticky rice, they go into this binding, and the freshness and openness of awareness is lost. It's not lost, because the binding is only available for you, revealed through your awareness, but because of the intoxication in the binding, which is the radiance of the open ground, it appears as dullness. And that's the tragedy, that freedom is everywhere, present in every moment, and hidden by our own intoxication. Certainly in the field of therapy, we encounter people, especially if you're working with younger people, you encounter people on the edge of giving themselves a small life. You see the first kind of self-harm things, that they're picking away at something or they're plucking on their hair, and then you start to see that they're cutting, and then their diet's changing, and then they're not eating or going bulimic. And all of these activities are shrinkages of the world. These are self-referential gestures which impede the non-duality of being in the world. Does that make sense? Once you have an obsession, if you smoke cigarettes, the first thing you need to know is, where's my fags? Where's my fags? If you're a drinker, where's my bottle? So there's no longer a simplicity of being. It's like, where can I do this? So I've got to get home from school and go to the bathroom and get out my razor that I hide behind the cabinet and do my cutting and bind it up and do it before mum comes home. And there's whole elaborated patterns of ritualized behavior that go. So now there's secrets, there's an intensity, there's a shamefulness, there's a feeling of abnormality, there's all kinds of factors operating to increase the density of the experience, which then cuts you off from the world. So it's very, very interesting if we're working with other people, especially working with ourselves, to again and again find these points of spiraling in, of layering of thoughts, of attributing value again and again, where it comes to a point, I have to. I just have to. I have to. And the extreme point is where people move towards suicide. I just have to. I can't. If you read suicide notes, it's so often expressed in that way. I can't do anything else. It's the only road open to me. Wow, that is a thought. This person is killing themselves because the vast potential of their existence has been collapsed into a very narrow thought formation, which has just taken hold of them. And you get the same with religious prejudice, with racial prejudice, gender prejudices, sexual prejudices, so many prejudices, and they're all about the thought. Because the mind, in its openness, as the non-duality of emptiness and awareness, is the medium through which the thoughts are arising and passing. And yet, we get caught by a thought. So who gets caught by the thought? The one who gets caught by the thought is another thought. The ego is a thought. We'll look at that more in the afternoon. The ego is a thought construct. Thoughts catch thoughts. Thoughts can't catch awareness. So when you're meditating and you go off on a riff, who is the one who's gone off? Very important to just gently keep the light on and try to see, what is this getting lost? You don't want to judge yourself or blame yourself or make a decision, I'm never going to do this again, or I have to try harder. All of that's irrelevant. We want to see how it operates. How do I get lost? How do I get carried away? Because if you see that, then you see that moment of stickiness when the arising thought seems to scrape the surface of your mind and reveal a subject who could catch it. The object needs a subject, the subject needs an object. But subject and object are moving together within the open dimension of awareness. So awareness is like a stage, And on the stage, subject and object do their padada ceaselessly, endlessly, on and on. And the characterizations of subject and object are, of course, changing and changing and changing. They have got an incredible design department. They've got so many costumes they can wear, but they're always dancing together. And so in the meditation, what we want to do is to allow the object side to arise without the evocation of the subject. So that's why we have the instruction. Don't go after past thoughts. Don't wait expectantly for future thoughts. Just stay relaxed and present. You're not blocking the object. You're not distorting the patterning of the mind. But you don't have to do anything with it. It comes by itself and it goes by itself. And then you start to see, and the subject side is the same. Now, object side can arise and go, and subject side can arise and go. And then, when you get up from the meditation and you move in the world, you can carry on conversing with other people, and you don't get caught. Because the subject side is the movement of the energy of the mind. It's not you doing something. It's not I'm speaking to you. That's a conceptualization which is not necessary, which doesn't illuminate the actuality, because subject and object are co-emergent, are non-dual with each other and with the ground. So these are a lot of words. They only really start to ring true if you sit and you get close to yourself and you don't get so carried away by thoughts. The world is a wonderful place, but it's also suffused with invitations to think yourself stupid. Okay, so we take a break now for lunch.